Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Perkins, and today I'm talking to author Janet Garber. Janet has spent 30 plus years in HR before retiring and becoming a full-time writer of both fiction and non-fiction. Her latest book, Dream Job, The Wacky Adventures of an HR Manager, is all about Mellie, who works at Access Monday Medical Centre and has to deal with buttock-groping doctors, a murder, cheating spouses, and flaky staff. Hi, Janet. First of all, welcome, and thank you for coming on Book Talk Radio Club.
Well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. So, Janet, having worked in HR for so many years yourself, how true to life are the HR problems Mellie has to deal with?
Let's put it this way. In HR circles, we usually say you can't make this stuff up.
True.
And I've been in situations where they just cried out for satire. So, did I ever have someone come after me with knives? Perhaps. Were there sexually inappropriate doctors? Could be. Did I ever have to counsel a poor woman who'd been choked by her supervisor? Might have happened. I take refuge behind my fiction disclosure that any resemblance to characters living or dead is purely coincidental. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. It certainly does. Truth is definitely stranger than fiction.
Yes.
Can you tell Book Talk Radio Club's listeners a little bit about the Mellie character and how she manages to deal with the stresses of her job?
Well, if you read the book, she doesn't manage too well. She's a single woman. She's just hit 40, and reality is starting to, take her over. Her job is unbelievably stressful, and I don't even think there is a way for anyone to handle the stress that I've given her in this book. It's just unending crises upon crises. She goes home to her cat. She keeps everything very quiet at home, and then she's racked by unbelievable dreams of mayhem and murder.
Oh,
there actually is a murder in the story.
Right.
And a lot of other crazy stuff that goes on. So doesn't do very well. Is headed for a breakdown. And that's part of the tension in the novel to see, what happens. Is she going to survive? How is she going to figure out her way out of the mess?
Okay. So one of the characters in Dream Job is a parrot woman gladiator. What on earth is a parrot woman gladiator?
Well, there is a love interest, thank God, that shows up in the second half of the book. And he has a beautiful macaw parrot that he's very, very attached to.
Right.
Mellie feels quite threatened by this rival. So she actually tries to borrow some of the parrot's tactics and starts dressing like a parrot and other things. And they have a big confrontation, which is risky on Mellie's part because her boyfriend Ted is quite attached to this parrot. He's been with him through thick and thin.
Right.
And the reason I call her a parrot woman gladiator is she marches back and forth in a very military way on her perch.
Okay.
The dirty cage, and she is definitely menacing.
Sounds very funny.
It is, I hope.
You also write non-fiction, and I understand you wrote a book back in 2003 for Barnes & Noble titled The Basics of Getting a Job. So how different is it for today's job seeker from 2003? And do you think your book's advice is still pertinent 14 years on after publishing?
Okay, well, just to backtrack a little bit, I started in writing nonfiction. And I wrote many, many career articles for the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post and trade journals.
Right.
So in 2000, I think it was actually 2001 that I published the first book, Getting a Job.
Right.
And this happened as a result of Barnes & Noble contacting me after seeing one of my articles in the Post that was kind of whimsical and flippant. And they liked the style, and so they asked me to write this book. The book is really a compendium of all my experiences in HR. So all the accumulated wisdom, if it's that. Job seekers, all the things that I couldn't tell a person sitting across the desk from me when they were interviewing with me.
Right.
All the little tips about how to really connect to the interviewer and what to wear and what your resume should look like. How to figure out in the first place, what you want to do in life.
Sure.
And it ends with even, maybe you want to be an entrepreneur and work for yourself. So that was published in 2001 and republished in 2003, as you said, as
Yep.
Getting a Job. I believe that all the, everything really still stands.
Right.
Obviously, the URLs and websites are all out of date.
Sure.
But just in terms of the text, I think it's all very true today. And in fact, I'm teaching I'm going to teach later on today at our local library a little workshop on how to get a job. And
Okay.
and I've been referring to a lot of the information in the books.
So it's still pertinent then, you can say.
That's still pertinent. Short answer, yes.
Okay, fair enough. And I understand you write short stories which have been included in some published books along with other writers. Were these books also about job seeking and HR? And if not, what were they about?
No, this is strictly fiction. I
Right.
feel free now as a retiree to write fiction, which was always my first love
Mm-hmm.
as a literature student. And I've written all types of short stories. Usually there's humor in all the stories.
Right.
So I've written sort of light horror stories and sci-fi and just normal kinds of stories.
Okay. So you
And
you
they've
you
been put into a few anthologies. And I should mention that my book Dream Job,
mm-hmm.
I was informed is a finalist in the Next Generation Indie Book Awards.
Oh wow, fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm going to actually get a medal and have a little ceremony at the Harvard Club in New York City.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, what a nice feeling that must be for you.
It is nice to get some, approval, acceptance rather than, the weekly rejections that come in the mail.
Sure, a little bit of validation goes a long way.
Yes.
I see from your bio that you love to hike in the gunks. I'm from the UK. What are the gunks?
The Gunks are it's a beautiful ridge called the Shawangunk Mountain Ridge.
Okay,
And it's in upstate New York in a town called New Paltz.
okay,
And it's very well known for the hiking and for the rock climbing. And
right.
I've been going up there for more than 20 years. It's just very beautiful. You can hike, obviously go around the lake, or you can hike for 5 hours. And
Okay,
it's just a stunning area. So if you do come to the New York area, it's something you should visit.
I'll have to remember that. Thank you. So, where's your writing place? In other words, what or where inspires you to write?
Well, in terms of a place, I'm really good at almost anywhere. I love a noisy cafe as long as there's not, two women right next to me having a heated, discussion about something. If the noise is just in the background, I'm great. I
Right.
can sit outside. I wrote, in fact, Dream Job. A lot of it was written on the Metro North Railroad going into my day job.
Oh, my goodness.
I had a half an hour ride, and I would just start writing the minute the train took off.
Right.
That worked. And, I work at my desk at my computer. That's where I work is not really the issue. For me, it's, am I going to work? Or am I going to be distracted by my friends and activities and plays and,
Sure.
hiking?
Sure. I know that when I'm outside, it definitely, I mean, I'm not so much of a hiker. I like to take my dog for a walk around the lakes, which is near me, just small lakes. That's where I tend to be inspired. I was just interested to find out where you wrote. It's good. So what's next for Janet Garber?
Well, I'm very excitedly working on my second novel about an American girl, her French husband and baby living in Paris in the 1970s.
Why the 1970s?
Well, that's just when these events happen.
Oh, fair enough.
Obviously, some of it is based on some reality,
Right.
but fictionalized.
Hmm.
And 1970s were a very exciting time because that's when women's lib was starting up
Hmm.
and the sexual revolution, and women were starting to get antsy
Right.
in their positions at work or at home,
Mm.
and it's just a very rich time period.
And when do you expect that to be published?
Well, I'm really striving now to get the first draft done.
Right.
So I kind of have pieces of it, or I have most of it written, and I've just got to string it all together. I do work in a rather strange way where I write scenes and they're not necessarily in order.
Right. They just come as you imagine, as you see them in your imagination.
Yes, so now I've got to weave it all together, and that could take a while.
I'm sure. Okay, so where can Book Talk Radio listeners purchase your books?
My books are widely available. They're on Amazon. Well, first of all, they're on Lulu.com.
Right.
They're on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and they're available in Kindle and Kobo.
Mm-hmm.
and Nook.
Right.
So getting the books, it should not really be any kind of a problem. And I think Ingram as well.
Right. Okay. Okay, that's lovely. Okay, thank you, Janet. That was fascinating. Please come back on Book Talk Radio when you've published your book. I'd love to chat with you and hear more. And in the meantime, good luck for the future. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio. Thanks, Janet.
Thank you all so much.